despite coronavirus fears, you guys are still calling for 3.5% to 4% growth in retail sales this year. Is that right?
Yeah, Kelly, good afternoon. That is right. We put our forecast out yesterday, and that's a forecast that we've been working on for a few weeks. So before we started to experience the really kind of severe reaction we're seeing in the market over the last few days. And it's really based on the really strong fundamentals of the consumer economy. And I think in the conversations we've had with retail leaders, as we've convened retail leaders to talk about the environment, both earlier this year and more recently, there are a lot of positive signs about how consumers are doing. You talk about the low unemployment rates and growing wages, low household debt. So overall, we're in a good place. Obviously, now we've got the uncertainty introduced into the market related to the health issues.
Well, there's so multiple factors, and the stocks hardest hit kind of reflect that. There's companies with high debt levels or kind of poor prospects in the first place where losing marginal demand is going to really hurt. There's companies who tend to have more demand or supply exposure to China. And then there's just the names that people feel like, look, there's just not a reason for exposure to companies that rely heavily on discretionary spending, period. What do you guys see so far in terms of kind of the weekly numbers or any even daily insight you can give us about how shopping behavior is changing so far, if it is?
Well, we've been doing our best to have those conversations with our members as we've tried to convene those retail leaders and ask those questions. And we're grateful to healthcare experts and the administration for making representatives from the CDC and the Department of Health and Human Services, others available to talk to our members in conference calls and other settings. And I think it's interesting, I just heard the segment with Steve, and I heard Steve was on this morning as well. And this morning, as you just said a minute ago, Kelly, talking about this as a supply problem, but now people saying, well, is it a demand problem? And I think in terms of the supply chain, I talked to a lot of CEOs. I just spoke to one right before we went on the air. And the sense is that much of the inventory that they need, and I think this is true for a lot of companies, is already pulled into, it's either on the water or in the ports or in distribution centers. So we've got the supply, and the disruption in the Chinese supply chain is coming back online. And so the question is what happens after that in this country? And I think we have to rely on the guidance of healthcare professionals to direct us as to, make all the preparations we should, but let's expect that that we're going to be ready if we have to deal with some of this.
Did I just hear you say that the disruption in the Chinese supply line is abating?
Yeah, Tyler, in talking, and this is, there's a lot of variability, obviously, between companies and even inside segments based on your customer base, who you're serving, what your product is, and even what your supply chain looks like. So a number, I think, of the larger companies have started to indicate that the signs that they're getting from the Chinese market is some of the production is coming back online. I think there's a question of how long is that tail that works through the system to get those companies back to full strength and really producing goods at the rate they need them. But yeah, go ahead.
We're running out a little bit out of time. What are you hearing, if anything, about foot traffic in malls or in stores that aren't necessarily in malls? And would you expect to see, if this virus persists, a swing towards more online shopping where people stay at home, and when they're not watching Netflix, maybe they're on Amazon or Walmart's online or whatever?
Yeah, at the moment, Tyler, we haven't gotten any indication that foot traffic in the United States, in the U.S., and the United States has altered related to the coronavirus. So people are still out. Consumer confidence remains high in very relative terms, and people are still shopping and consuming. Consumers are resilient. They've powered us through the economic disruptions in the past, both man-made and and natural kinds of issues. And I think we should have every reason to believe that consumers will remain resilient and power us through this time as well.
Matthew Shay, it's good to have you today. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Kelly.